Hey everybody, Koricon here, and I've got
Scott.
My friend Scott and I went and saw Solo. It was my second time.
My first time.
His first time. And I hadn't done my review yet. I had a busy week, and then when I was about to get to it, he wanted to see it, and I was like, yeah, I'll just wait and then review it with you. So, no spoilers.
None.
What are your initial thoughts?
I enjoyed the movie for what it was. It was a good action movie with some great, with a good storyline, great characters that you actually care about them, and just fun.
It was fun. The action scenes were really good, well shot, dynamic. I think some of them had some edits were too quick, but for the most part, smooth, longer edits for a lot of the ship stuff.
Yeah.
And it looked great. I mean, the sets, the production design, the costumes, the CGI, like all of that stuff looked top notch. Just really great. The thing is, like, I didn't feel the movie was needed just because there isn't any surprises. It's information that we already know. We just don't know the details of how. And so they're giving us those details, but it's like, you know where it's going. You're just kind of waiting for them to hit the beats. Like how he meets Chewie and how he gets the Millennium Falcon and how he does the Kessel Run and that kind of thing. There were some smaller ones that I really enjoyed, like why Lando calls him Han instead of Han, and I thought that was pretty funny. I like that.
And I like the inclusion of the dice. It was just a little detail, but it was a nice inclusion. Yeah,
it was. And so I liked all that stuff, and it was a fun movie. I enjoyed it. I just didn't feel it was, like, necessary.
Right.
Like, they could have spent that money to do another movie for a storyline and characters I don't know, and I would have been perfectly happy not having this movie.
Right.
But we have it, and so I enjoy it. Yeah. It is what it is. But I had fun. One of the only other things is the movie is called Solo, and it's about Han Solo. But I thought some of my favorite characters were not Han Solo.
Right.
Like Lando and Chewie were my favorite characters.
Right.
Donald Glover nailed it as Lando. Like, you could call the movie Lando and I would have been perfectly happy.
Yes.
Now, Aldrich did a good job as Han. I've heard people complain that he's not, because obviously he's not Harrison Ford. He's not going to be Harrison Ford. And I don't want him to imitate Harrison Ford, because then it would come off as cheesy. But they're like, oh, he's not the pessimistic guy, like they lost his character. Well, not everyone starts out pessimistic. You start out optimistic and become pessimistic. And this is the beginning. So he's still optimistic. And he does have an arc through the whole movie.
That's right. So one of the things that seemed a bit not on par was the music.
Yeah, the music, like, they had a lot of the original themes in there. But you would have an action sequence that wasn't intercutting between different actions. It was one action sequence, like the Kessel Run.
Right.
But they would cut in like 3 or 4 sections or themes from the original Star Wars.
Right.
And they would bounce back and forth. And it felt like really disconnected and disjointed, and it kind of threw me off. I'm like, oh man, they're jumping music all over. Like, it's not supporting the scenes. It just feels like a bunch of snippets of the popular parts of these theme songs.
Right.
And then, like, if you watch, I know it's not a popular movie, but Episode 1, when you get to the Darth Maul fight, you have the Duel of the Fates. But then you also have that other song that's playing when you have Amidala and all of them going to get the guys.
Really? You don't say.
The Trade Federation dudes. But they each had their own theme. And then they would cut back and forth, but they would cut back and forth inside the song, so you were flowing with it along with the scene. This one, it was like 5 seconds of this popular part of the theme song and 5 seconds of this other song popular part, and then and it was like jumping everywhere. And so I wish they had done that better. Some of the other original background music I thought sounded good, but then they kept throwing in original music again, like trying to remind people what it is when you don't need to.
Right. And there was nothing musically that stood out as being epic, like the Duel of the Fates.
Yeah, there wasn't any like really large, kind of long playing theme song.
Honestly, with Star Wars, I don't think there's been any music since Duel of the Fates that stands out in my mind as strong, other than obviously the original themes.
Yeah. But Duel of the Fates would be the last one.
Yeah.
I mean, this one had theme songs, but not anything that like epically stood out.
Right.
In the original movies, Han Solo says, you know, I've been across the universe, I've seen many things, I've never seen anything that proves to me that there's this all-encompassing force that controls everything, right? And so one of my worries going into the movie was that he was going to interact with some force user or see one of Darth Vader or something. And they didn't do that, thank God.
Right.
But they did set it up for a sequel that I feel if they do it, would feel like they're trying to move around that on purpose. And I don't want them to do that.
Right. I have a feeling they're not going to do a sequel to this movie. It stands alone as is as well. Doesn't require one.
Well, they have two beats right at the end with two characters going in different directions that feel like to be continued. So it feels like they set up a sequel because they didn't wrap that. Now, Han Solo's storyline, you could just say, okay, well, you know where he's going. You don't need to do that one. But this other character, it feels like they could just go there, and they were setting up to do that.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want Han involved in that.
Right.
Now, there were a lot of problems with the production, as I'm sure a lot of you know. Lord and Miller were fired as directors, and they brought in Ron Howard.
That's right.
For coming in late and reshooting 70%, not being a part of pre-production and having all those decisions, he put together a good movie.
Yes.
You know, with all of that problem going on.
He's a well-established director, phenomenal movies under his belt. So I think of anybody coming into that tough a situation, he had a really good shot of doing it well.
Now, there were some scenes that I could tell were patched. Like maybe they couldn't reshoot the whole thing because of money or time. But there were like a couple of scenes where there was like an abrupt tone change. It went from like humor to serious or something like that, and it just really abruptly. But I think it's the best that he could do with what he had.
And it moves through quick enough that you can get over it pretty quick.
Yeah, it's not distracting, and not as distracting as the music.
Right.
The music, I think, distracted me more than anything else. The other thing is, like, a lot of people were that I've heard complained. I don't know how many actually are. I just heard secondhand that people were complaining that Aldrich played him too optimistic. That Han Solo is supposed to be more pessimistic, which he is in the original trilogy, right? But no one starts out pessimistic. They start out optimistic and then become pessimistic because of what they have to deal with. So this is the beginning of his story when he's still optimistic. Like he's got the dreams, right? And he's moving towards the dreams. But he does have an arc in the film to where you can see where he is going. They just don't go full pessimistic.
Right.
So I don't have that complaint. I think it makes perfect sense of why his character is the way he is, and I thought Aldrich did a good job. Absolutely. He just wasn't the standout, which he should have been.
Right.
But he wasn't bad.
No. Yeah, in this movie he makes a great supporting character which is odd for a movie that bears his
name, right?
Which, on that point, I found it interesting how he got his name too. That was a nice little tidbit.
Yeah, that was interesting. I know some people wouldn't like it, but I did. Yeah. I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah, I liked seeing the little details. But it is one of those things where you're like, don't need the movie, but I like now that we have it.
Yeah, just one, if you go see it, enjoy the ride for what it is, and that's it. If you try to add what you think should have been, it'll take away from it.
Now, I did like the fact that it wasn't like super epic soap, space opera movie.
Yes.
That it really was more of a smaller, like a heist movie, which is what they were promoting, and that's what I was expecting, and that's what I got. So I am happy with that, because I would like to see smaller stories in the Star Wars universe.
Right.
But I want them to move on to stories that I won't know what happens. With like Rogue One and with Solo, I know the end game. So there's no surprise there. Like in Rogue One, I really like Rogue One, but I couldn't get attached to the character because I know they die.
Because you're heartless.
Yeah. And then in Solo, I like the characters, but I know where they're going, and I'm just waiting for those beats to see if they do them.
Right.
And then probably complain if they missed one.
Right. So if you could pick a character to have a movie based on, who would you want?
I would want I would want an Obi-Wan, even though I know where it's going because of Episode 4. But Ewan McGregor is the perfect age to do the right in between when Luke was maybe like 10 and he's on Tatooine.
Right.
So I kind of want that, but again, it wouldn't be needed. It's more of like just fan service for me.
Right.
But I would want it I guess what I would want to have that wouldn't be known would be like a Darth Maul story, or like a Boba Fett movie. But I don't want a prequel Boba Fett movie. Like, I don't want how Boba Fett becomes a bounty hunter. I want the story that happened in the old canon. That doesn't have to be the exact story, but just the fact that he comes out of the Sarlacc pit, he survives it, and then do something new with him later.
Right.
Because we wouldn't have seen any of that. We wouldn't know where it's going. It would be open-ended. So I would love to see that, him coming out of the Sarlacc pit. And then ever since the rumors that they were doing a Boba Fett movie, there's been memes going all over the place saying like Boba Fett's a trash bounty hunter because he died in a slapstick, way. But if he came out of the Sarlacc pit, he can be like, I was off my guard, and then move on, and they could do something really cool with him. I don't know. Other than that, I want him to go to the Knights of the Old Republic. I want some original stories with characters that we haven't had. I would like if they brought back some of the characters from the old canon, but it doesn't have to be the exact stories. Just like popular characters like Kane and things like that.
Right. Kind of like a young Yoda. Who trained him? What happened there? I think there's some possibilities, and maybe I'm the only one. Commenting down below if you think I am, or if you think there's something to this. To see more about Yoda, because we know about him from the original trilogy and some more from the prequels, but he was pretty old by that point.
Well, I think it would be cool to see Yoda in his prime.
Right.
Like, we don't really know anything about his past too much. I mean, just that he's 900 years old, but what was he doing when he was 300?
Right.
That would be a cool movie. You could really see him doing... I just don't want him flipping around like Kermit, like he did in Attack of the Clones.
Right, episode 2, that was... not quite the same.
No, Yoda, to me, is a more powerful Force user than he is a lightsaber guy. Like, I think he would do very well with a lightsaber, but I don't want him jumping and leaping all over the place.
Right.
I would want him to really use it more as a defense and then be using the Force as his main offense, because he's super powerful that way. But other than that, I want some more original stories. Now, one of the things about Solo is a lot of people, I think, are going to complain just because they want to complain.
Yes.
A lot of people that are complaining are going to complain because they're still mad that the old canon is not canon. Which my argument always was they have to do that just because you can't have... You're just going to do movies about the books that are already there. There's no surprise. But then people complain because it's not what they're used to.
Right.
It's not feeding their nostalgia.
Yes.
So they're not happy if it's exactly the same, and they're not happy if it's different. They're just not going to be happy.
That's right.
So I pretty much I enjoy what I get, and I try and find the positives in it all. And for the most part, like, all of the movies, I think, have more positives than negatives, even though I have some negatives. But every movie is like that. Nothing's perfect. So I enjoyed the movie. I think it had some problems. There was some production problems in there. But overall, I'm going to give it a grade of a B. I want to say B+. I'll give it a B+ because the production value was really high.
And I'm going to give it a solid B just because, not that it wasn't a good movie overall, but having the name Star Wars attached to it, you expect more from Star Wars, and then having a company like Disney behind them, not like they're lacking the funds or the expertise to make a phenomenal movie. So I feel like this wasn't one of their A-game stories. It was kind of rushed, and it literally was rushed. And so it could have been better, but it still gets a solid B overall. Very fun movie, very enjoyable.
Well, one of the things I think really hurt it was it coming out in May. It's too close to, The Last Jedi. Yeah, The Last Jedi. And they were on a thing of releasing a movie every December, which was still a little bit too close, but at least we had a year of... Half the fun is speculation and all this other stuff.
Speculation, anticipation, and we just didn't have the time to...
we barely had any time to finish absorbing Last Jedi to be prepared for Solo, and then it comes out around these other big movies. It was just a horrible idea. I think Star Wars, even though it started out in May.
That's right, the first 6 movies all came out in May.
Which is fine. Now they do better at Christmas. Move to Christmas. You don't have to be in May. So I think they should do Christmas, and I would even say push it to where it's every 2 years instead of every year.
Right.
Because I think really hitting it in May is giving people Star Wars fatigue.
Yes.
If they had done it in December, they would have had a few more years before that fatigue set in. I think they really shot themselves in the foot by releasing it in May. So, that's my thoughts. What do you think? Comment below and let us know.
Yes,
like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for joining with me.
Absolutely. I enjoy it.
Tell your friends. And we will see you on the next video.
And your family too.